The three beautiful ladies, you're more than welcome to come. No, don't go. Don't go, ladies. I want you to stay. You're beautiful. There's no love in the heart of the city. So I'm going to start, and I want to talk to you about the good, the bad, the ugly, when CE startups and investors come to Silicon Valley. As you probably know, I'm a Harvard lawyer working with startups and investors that are from this part of Europe that are coming to the Valley. My presentation, it's not a lecture. I'm not trying to lecture anybody or moralize. I just wanted to share with you some good and bad practices and things that we all can improve on. And I think this is not, my opinion or sort of an editorial. These are facts. I'm more than happy to talk about facts, but unfortunately I cannot disclose names and circumstances of these facts. So, the good, the bad, the ugly. So Silicon Valley is a physical place, but it's also a business culture. It's a physical place based in California, but it's also a business culture that's spreading. So it's spreading also to Europe, and there's certain venture funds and startups that have this Silicon Valley mentality. And it's also important as a physical place because a lot of you are coming to the Valley for different reasons, and we're going to discuss those reasons. So yesterday, you heard Dan Lyons talk about myths of Silicon Valley, and he's a writer of the HBO show. So unfortunately, Silicon Valley does not look like the HBO show Silicon Valley. It's a pastiche. However, if you're looking for a cultural something similar to it, you should look into The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's a great movie, a Western. It's a spaghetti Western that describes a couple of guys trying to find gold in a cemetery. And that's what building tech companies is like. It's like finding gold in a cemetery with very strange, weird people. Okay, so the million-dollar question is, can you build things outside of Silicon Valley? And the answer is yes, because Silicon Valley is everywhere. But one of the key things is that in the digital world, all roads lead to Menlo Park and Palo Alto, because that's where the future is written, and that's where the ambitions, the ideas, the capital, and the people are right now. So it's a high concentration of these three components. And again, I mentioned it's not the HBO show. It's a very complex ecosystem of investors, advisors, and it's been going on since the early 1920s. So it's over almost 100 years of innovation, destruction, building businesses going bankrupt. So it's very complicated, but it is the future, and all roads lead to Silicon Valley, and the Silicon Valley mentality is going to prevail. And unfortunately, it's going to prevail over the old industrial world and places that are not up to speed. So, I want to stress this. Silicon Valley is not about putting on a hoodie and learning the lingo. It's a deep understanding of culture. One of the VCs from this part of the world said, we can replicate, we'll build institutions, we have the capital, we can do things here. And he forgot to say that it's culture. It's a culture of entrepreneurship. It's a culture of innovation. And it's, like with culture, it's hard to like pinpoint the particulars of the culture. So I just listed, 4 things that I've been thinking about and talking to people what, makes the culture. So it's the problem solution method. There was an earlier presentation here, and there was a problem, a technical problem. And the guy came and like didn't want to like solve it and like blamed me and the organizers. It's about identifying market opportunities, and it's about identifying the best customer. And the 4th thing, which I think is unique, it's about the Silicon Valley method or culture. It's about scaling small to big. And it's also about scaling big to small, because a lot of companies go small. But what's unique is that there's a possibility of scaling small companies into big companies. Companies that started in a garage, co-working space, or a classroom at Stanford. Okay, so the good. There's Clint Eastwood. So the good. So how many of you were good students? Okay, no, I wasn't. I wasn't. One more time. How many of you did your homework and were prepared for class? Not a lot. Okay, that's not good. So being a successful, the good investor or startup, it's about doing your homework. So do you need to be in the valley? The answer is it depends, but I think it's yes, because that's where the future is written, and you have all of the things to succeed. So good founders or good investors are good at feedback and listening. And unfortunately, a lot of people from Eastern Europe, when they come to the valley, they pitch for 30, 40 minutes, and they forget to get feedback. They sell. And the valley, as I mentioned, it's over 80 years of 90, maybe 100 of innovation, and they listen because they've seen it all, and they have interesting feedback for you. Again, there's no secret handshake. So you don't belong to Ukwat or some sort of club and you get in, or you have an investor who opens doors. You really have to work hard for it to be successful as an investor or a startup or a founder. And there's so much information about the Valley, and if success was so simple, in the digital world, there would be a roadmap. And unfortunately, there is no roadmap. There's no plan to be successful. And you have to improvise, and you have to read reality. You have to listen. So the guys who succeed from Eastern Europe that made it big in the Valley are guys who did all of these things. Another thing that I do want to emphasize is that, and Tina Gilmore and Steve Gilmore will disagree with me on this, but there is a culture of help. When was the last time one of you asked for help? Raise your hand. So the room, there's maybe 70 people and 4 people asked for help. It's okay to be helpless and not know the answer. It's okay to ask other people for help. And that's what the Valley is about. And that's the success. The success about is asking for help and sharing. One more experiment. How many of you shared something with another person for free? Raise your hand. Still low. Sharing is caring. And this is what makes great companies from Eastern Europe succeed, because they're willing to ask for help and share their experience. That's why you have Kubak Sheikh from Estimo telling about, success and his, experience. And you have so many people who have been to the valley and successful, they share it because it's not only for them, it's for the community. And finally, there's a misconception among Eastern European startups and also investors, unfortunately, that being an investor or a startup founder, it's lifetime employment. So you get a salary. No, there's no lifetime employment. What you get is the opportunity to do an exit and get rich on that. So if you're expecting a salary by going to the valley and raising some money, you're not going to succeed. So that's the good. So successful entrepreneurs, when they come to the valley, or investors, they have these 4 metrics. So team, traction, investor, idea. Traction is important and can be a lot of different things, but you have to have network effects, stickiness, maybe sales. Maybe you can show traction by having one crazy investor investing in you from Europe. Maybe that's enough. Okay, so when you're in the valley, or you need to explore. So you need to explore, meet people, and learn, and get that feedback. And then when you're there, you have to make a plan. Make a plan. Do I want to go back to Europe? And that's fine. Or you want to execute. And most people, when they come, they don't want to explore because they're afraid, because Eastern Europeans are very afraid of, talking to other people because they're afraid. And they're afraid to, make a plan and execute it. So what do you think is the most important thing for a startup? Financing or finding clients? Can we get a vote? Clients or financing? No, hands up for financing. I'm not participating in the vote. And you have to raise your hand. So, financing. So, 2 hands, clients. Whoa. So, remember, Silicon Valley is not about the financing. It's about the whole mentor ecosystem. You have people who have failed, you have people who succeeded, and you have people who are CEOs, mid-levels, and they have a story, and they want to share that story with you. So it's about getting mentors and being close to your customers. And you're here in Eastern Europe, and it's okay, right? But you want to be close to the Facebook. You want to be close to the Google, to the Cisco, Airbnb, Uber. You want to be close to the customers. So that's why, the guys who are successful understand that it's not that it's a luxury to be in Silicon Valley. It's mandatory because you need to be close to your customers. And you have to understand one thing about the Valley. The Valley is one big conference. It's like the World Fairs in the 19th century. So people were presenting things in the Industrial Revolution, and they had their little gadgets. So everybody, the small and the big, are in the Valley. So you have Siemens, Bosch, you have all of these American companies, and everyone is trying to innovate and get ahead. And being, from Poland or Eastern Europe is not bad if you have something really good. So you have to be there and participate in these world fairs. And that's why there's so many conferences in Silicon Valley, because people are sharing and they want to share. Okay, so the good guys. The good guys have KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. So in the Valley, no one likes complications. They want simple. And like usually when a person from Eastern Europe that comes to the Valley, he pitches something, blah, 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 for 30, 40 minutes, and then he gets the feedback, and then he goes on, blah, 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 and he talks about plan B. And if you go to the Valley and you pitch plan A and then you start pitching plan B, that means you're not committed to plan A and you really haven't thought through what you're doing. Okay, so keep it simple, stupid. Also, a big issue is the capitalization table, the cap table. So a lot of investors from Europe, and this is very unfortunate, and also founders have this issue, mess up the cap table. And the cap table is the list of owners. And if the list of ownership does not make sense, if it does not make sense, that means your company will not get funded. So your ownership structure of founders and investors has to make sense for people in the Valley. And I'm more than happy to talk about, what makes sense. Okay. The good. Build, network. Networking is important, and I'm going to talk about bad networking in a minute. And building network is connected to following up. How many of you follow up? Hands up. Do people know what following up is? Is the silence no or? Okay. So following up is key to success. Follow up means you come to the Valley, someone tells you no, but you still email them and tell them what's going on because maybe they want to invest, maybe they want to become a mentor. You need to follow up. It's not that you go and then you leave. You have to stay in touch. And how many of you write thank you notes? Again, we're going to vote. People who write thank you notes and people who don't. How many of you write thank you notes? Minority. And that's why you're not successful. You need to thank people for their time. And it's a big part of being in the Valley. You need to thank people for their time and their effort. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the bad. And again, facts, not opinions. So there is what I call the Central and Eastern European syndrome. It's a syndrome. I think it's some sort of illness or disease. And I just listed the components. You're not big enough. You come with a lousy idea or a lousy team that's not big enough. People in the Valley and people who have the Silicon Valley mentality, and there's venture funds like Index, Acela in Europe, Credo, Sunstone, people I know, they want big, and you're not big enough. How many people are doing a startup here? Hands up. Have you asked yourself, will your company give you a $100 million exit? Hands up. One guy. One person. If you're not thinking big, you should leave the room. Go big or go home. This is the mantra. So only unicorns, not, ponies. You have to go big. And the other thing, the bad, too late, too slow. You iterate products, too late, too slow. So do people know that there was an Eastern European version of WhatsApp and Waze at the same, and Dropbox at the same time here in the region? And the investor said, too risky, or the founders were too slow because we're in Poland or in Eastern Europe, and it's okay. People in the Valley go fast. And there's Mark. And another thing, Eastern Europeans think that, it's all about rule breaking. And they go to the Valley and they hear about Uber and Airbnb breaking rules. And unfortunately, rule breaking doesn't mean rule breaking in Eastern Europe. It's like two different things. And usually with rule breaking, there are serious issues going on with the founders, the investors, and they're borderline rule breaking, or sometimes they're rule breaking. And statistically, it happens a lot. So, networking. Networking does not mean not working. Okay? So, networking is working. So, a lot of Eastern Europeans have a problem of networking. Networking is not small talk. Networking means going to someone at Bitspiration and asking them for a business card. What do you do? How can I help you? Maybe we can do something together. That's networking. Yesterday, I got approached only 3 times about networking. All day at the conference. Ask yourself, how many times did you network yesterday? And network, and by network, I mean not pitching your silly startup, but like networking and finding out what the other person has to say and how can he help you and what you guys can do together, or listen. So that goes back to the problem with listening. Okay, recognize versus replicate. So again, good investors and good founders and good startups recognize something in the world. It's like about creativity, right? You recognize, you don't replicate something. So there's so many replicas of something that's in Silicon Valley here. You have to be really original and authentic. It has to be new ideas versus cloning and looking for similarities or patterns. If it was so simple, it would be simple. And that's why, the Israeli startup system is so much better than Eastern Europe, because they're not looking for similarities or patterns. They have the courage, they have the audacity to build huge things, not small. And in terms of recognition and replication, you have to remember product, business, company. So the big sin of investors is that they want a business and a company, and they invest in the ones from Eastern Europe want a business and a company. And founders from Eastern Europe in the Valley only have a product, and they claim they have a business or a company. Okay, the bad, more. So it gets worse. So a lot of, people from Eastern Europe want only money. It's just ridiculous. They go to the Valley and ask for money. And that's the most erroneous thing you can do. You need to ask for mentorship and advice. And then maybe once you do a feedback loop, meet customers, you can ask for money. Another thing, which is bad, how many of you have dreams? Awesome. So in terms of dreams, how many of you think that dreams are important? Everybody. So no European VC will invest in dreams. Period. Tesla will not happen in Europe. And these are not my words. These are the words of Oliver Samvar, who said this in January of this year. Europeans do not invest in dreams. And the Valley invests in dreams and wants something big and dreamful. Airbnb, crazy. Uber, crazy. Facebook, crazy. Dreams. So you need a dream. And FOMO. FOMO is short for fear of missing out. Fear of missing out. Everybody in the Valley is driven by FOMO. And if you're a startup and you have no skin in the game here in Europe and have no FOMO, then you don't have the right incentives. If you're a venture fund from Europe that has European money and you're not risking anything, you have no FOMO. So that's the bad. And again, I mentioned people are not committed enough. If you're in the startup, you have to accept, you have to be committed. And people aren't committed. And being committed means being on a vesting schedule. That means you can lose your shares if you stop working. And people don't want to be on vesting. So then excuses. I hear so many excuses in the Valley from Eastern Europeans, and it's from investors and startups. And the excuses go like this. Silicon Valley is too hard. We should focus on Europe. We can't replicate Silicon Valley. Let's stay in Europe. And we don't have the capital and the entrepreneurs. We'll stay in Europe. God, it's so lame. It's like losers. And America wants winners, and Silicon Valley wants winners or underdogs. And if you're an underdog, you can succeed. Okay, so that was the bad. Now the ugly. So it's not bad, but it's ugly. So bad is bad, ugly is ugly. So people come to the Valley, and there's this, and they come like on a parachute, and like there's no plan. They don't have a list of people they want to meet, and they ask me for introductions. They ask me for meetups. Nothing, no homework done, and then no pay-it-forward culture. And Piotr Wilam is a big proponent of pay-it-forward culture, and pay-it-forward means that you don't have something to give me in return of value, but you still do me a favor from time to time. So for example, I do an introduction for someone. I'm not expecting, money for it, no, but be nice to me. Invite me to lunch. Do me a favor, or do a favor to someone in my network. And people from Eastern Europe don't think like this. They don't have a pay-it-forward culture. And it's not qui pro quo. I give you something in exchange for something. And again, insular. You can't be insular. You can't just, stay in Eastern Europe or be in this ghetto. You have to go out. And in the Valley, you can't stand in a room and just wait for someone to come to you and talk to you. And you have to compete. And you can't translate your Polish reality or your Eastern European reality for the things that are happening in the Valley. You have to really be open and learn about the Valley. And that means being coachable and learning from your investors, learning from your mentors. And it could be even European venture funds that have the Silicon Valley mentality. So the ugliest. So it's the investor or the startup that wants constant introduction. And I know people, and I have people who know people, but it's, ridiculous. You call me or you call someone in the Valley and you keep asking for introductions. And I have a person who really knows Mark Zuckerberg, but I'm not going to give it to you. And especially if you're not going to reciprocate, invite me to lunch. Do something for me. Do something for my network. And I've seen this multiple times. And I saw, my favorite example is an investor who asked for intros. And I counted on some business from him. And I introduced him to some very good venture funds in New York City. He never reciprocated business. That's bad. So you need to think about other people, not only think about yourself. So I hope it wasn't, opinionated, but, it's facts. I'm more than happy to discuss, and let's have a Q&A. And thank you. And P.S., you are the good, you are better, and you're the prettiest. Thank you. Or we don't have time for questions.
No, we have. Any questions to Tytus?
Guys, I said that, you got to be active, proactive, questions. Microphone, maybe.
Could you maybe elaborate on that cap table problem you said about?
Yeah, the cap table. So investors here in Eastern Europe, as a rule, because they're risk averse, they take up to 30% of, maybe 20 to 30% of the ownership of the company at the seed level. That's a lot. In the Valley, it's 80%. 80% stays with the owners. 10% at seed stays with the investors. And then, there's significant problems if the cap table doesn't work, because Americans, people in the Valley want a cap table where the founders have an incentive to work. And if you don't have an incentive to work as a founder, the company doesn't grow. It's simple. Okay.
It's your only chance to
Only
ask
chance.
Tytus about anything you want regarding his speech and his work.
Okay, one more.
Minor point about paying it forward. You were looking at it in terms of reciprocating back as a lunch, and that's nice too. But what I've always looked at it is doing a favor for someone, and that they go forward and do a favor for someone else in turn. That's the downstream magic that it can occur.
Yeah, that's correct. So, any questions about, why Eastern Europeans are not succeeding in Silicon Valley? And the key to success, and, it's simple. You just have to be good, and you have to have an awesome product and an awesome team. And, it's no accident that, Brainly, Estimote, Contact, there's Seed Labs, there's people who are successful because they did their homework, they were coachable, they listened, and they're great. But you have to be coachable, you want to learn, and you can do it. You can be successful. You can be successful here from Eastern Europe and build a company using the Silicon Valley methodology, or you can actually go there and try to make it big. But, again, it's pretty simple. It has to be big. It has to be $100 million exit at minimum. And you have to really think about the Silicon Valley experience, about, different people, your customers. It's not only about financing and funding.
So,
And that's Stu, who has been in the Valley for what, 30?
40 years?
40 years. And he's also an investor, angel investor, and he's the top IP person in the Valley.
So one phenomenon that occurs in around Palo Alto is that many countries set up incubators on a national basis someplace in the Valley and invite teams of people to come for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months to do some of their work in the Valley, make contacts, be more relaxed and less pressured about learning about what the infrastructure is around town. My question to you, Tytus, is how effective is that?
It's a complicated question. It's a good start, but as a capitalist, I feel very bad about governments paying for other people's trip to a foreign country. And I think, subsidizing a trip of 3 Polish people to go to Silicon Valley by the government is a bit unfair to Polish taxpayers. Maybe some people disagree about that, but I think, it's a good start. But, if you don't have skin in the game, and you're not making an investment yourself in going to the Valley, just doesn't make sense. And there's bureaucrats who run this, and they're there for a term, 3 years usually, and they go back to their country, and they have to. Then the government sends someone new, and they have to learn Silicon Valley again, and it takes a certain cultural component. And I think it's a lot better to have an investor that understands Silicon Valley, or just go and learn. Make mistakes, and you learn to invest on mistakes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.